The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I pushed the mail cart down the sterile hallway of Meridian Tech's executive floor. My hands, which once wrote code that powered Fortune 500 companies, now sorted through interdepartmental memos and junk mail. 15 years of dedication reduced to this, the vindictive punishment of a man who felt threatened by what he couldn't understand. "Morning, Diana," Marcus Wright, our newly appointed CEO, called out with fake cheerfulness as I passed his corner office. "Those quarterly reports better be properly sorted this time." I didn't look up. I didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing my face. Instead, I kept pushing my cart, letting the squeaking wheel punctuate the silence. Behind me, I heard his smug chuckle, the sound of a man who thought he'd won. What Marcus didn't know, what none of them knew, was that every mail delivery to the executive floor was also an opportunity. Each squeaky roll of my cart past their offices was another chance to observe, to listen, to gather intelligence that would prove invaluable in the months to come. Because while they saw a demoted senior developer pushing mail, I saw something else entirely. The final pieces of a plan 5 years in the making. It had started long before Marcus arrived with his MBA and his buzzwords about corporate restructuring. Back when I was still leading Meridian's core development team, I'd seen the signs. The slow erosion of innovation, the gradual shift towards short-term profits over long-term stability. I'd watched good people get pushed out, replaced by yes-men who knew how to talk about technology, but not how to build it. So I'd started planning, not out of revenge. Revenge is too simple, too emotional. No, I'd started planning because I saw an opportunity. While Meridian's leadership focused on quarterly earnings and stock buybacks, I focused on the future. "Ms. Walker," a quiet voice called out. I turned to see James, one of my former junior developers, looking uncomfortable in his newly pressed suit. I'm sorry about what happened. The demotion. It wasn't right." I smiled softly. James was one of the good ones. "Everything happens for a reason," I said, continuing my rounds. He had no idea how true those words were. 5 years ago, while still heading the development team, I'd started working on something in my spare time. A new kind of system architecture, one that could revolutionize how enterprise software handles data processing and security. Meridian's board had dismissed it as too experimental when I'd presented it. Marcus's predecessor had patted my head and told me to focus on realistic goals. So I did exactly that. I focused on building something of my own. The irony was delicious. Every day they forced me to spend in the mailroom was another day I could observe their operations without suspicion. Every degrading comment about my new role was another reminder of why I'd chosen to keep my startup, Nova Systems, completely secret from everyone at Meridian. As I pushed my cart into the break room, I overheard 2 executives talking in hushed tones. "The board's getting nervous," one whispered. "The new cloud platform isn't performing as promised. We're losing clients." "Marcus says he's got it under control," the other replied, not sounding convinced. I suppressed a smile. Of course the platform wasn't performing. They'd gutted the original architecture, my architecture, and replaced it with a flashy but fundamentally flawed system. What they didn't realize was that their biggest clients were already quietly talking to Nova Systems about an alternative. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Kate, my co-founder at Nova. "Final paperwork filed. IPO announcement set for tomorrow morning. You ready?" I glanced at my reflection in the break room window. The woman staring back at me didn't look like a typical tech founder. No designer clothes, No power suits. Just simple slacks and a button-up shirt. Graying hair pulled back in a practical bun. Exactly how they expected their mailroom lady to look. "Ready?" I typed back. "See you at the office tonight." The office was a converted warehouse in the industrial district, where for the past 5 years, I'd been building something that would make Meridian's technology look like a flip phone in the age of smartphones. While they'd been forcing me into irrelevance, I'd been quietly assembling a team of the best developers in the industry. Many of them former Meridian employees who'd been similarly pushed aside. We hadn't just built a better system, we built the future. As I finished my morning mail rounds, Marcus stepped out of his office, straightening his expensive tie. "Diana," he called out, that same condescending smile on his face. "Since you're heading to the lobby anyway, be a dear and pick up my dry cleaning, would you?" I nodded politely. "Of course, Mr. Wright." He turned to walk away, then paused. "You know, I never understood why you stayed after the demotion. Most people would have quit." I looked at him directly for the first time that day. "I believe in seeing things through to the end, Mr. Wright." He laughed, that sharp, dismissive sound I'd grown so familiar with. "The end? Diana, this is your end. This is what loyalty gets you in the real world. The sooner you accept that, the happier you'll be." I watched him walk away, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the polished floor. In less than 24 hours, those same shoes would probably scuff that same floor as he ran from reporter to reporter, trying to explain how his company's obsolete senior developer had just become his biggest competitor. That evening, as I left Meridian's offices for what I knew would be the last time, I took one final look at the building I'd called home for 15 years. The security guard gave me a sympathetic smile as I walked out. The same smile I'd been getting since my demotion 3 months ago. "Good night, Ms. Walker," he called out. "See you tomorrow?" I smiled back. "Tomorrow's going to be different, Carl. For all of us." The drive to Nova's headquarters took exactly 28 minutes. I'd made this journey every evening for the past 5 years, leaving Meridian's corporate politics behind and stepping into a world where innovation still mattered, where ideas were valued more than titles. As I pulled into the parking lot, I saw the lights were still on. Through the large windows, I could see my team, brilliant minds from around the world, all brought together by a shared vision, and in many cases, a shared experience of being underestimated and overlooked. Kate met me at the door, tablet in hand, excitement barely contained. "Everything's ready," she said, falling into step beside me. "Press releases are queued, SEC filings are complete, and the trading floor is prepped for tomorrow's opening bell." I nodded, taking in the busy scene before me. Developers were running final system checks, PR teams were reviewing statements, and legal was doing one last review of all documentation. The energy was electric. "Any word from our friends at Meridian?" I asked, heading toward my office. Kate's grin widened. "Not a peep. Their entire executive team is focused on tomorrow's board meeting. Marcus is apparently planning to announce another round of strategic restructuring." I sat down at my desk, running my fingers over the smooth surface. Such a contrast to the mail cart I'd been pushing just hours ago. How many of their clients have signed with us? 17 of their top 20, Kate replied. "All ready to switch over the moment we go live. The migration protocols you designed are already in place. It'll be seamless." I opened my laptop, checking one last time that everything was in order. On the screen, lines of code scrolled past. The same code Meridian had dismissed as too experimental 5 years ago. The same code that would, by this time tomorrow, be worth billions. What about the patent rights? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Kate's smile turned slightly wicked. All registered under Nova Systems, filed long before you signed Meridian's new IP agreement. Their lawyers can squirm all they want, but there's nothing they can do about it. I leaned back in my chair, letting out a long breath. 5 years of double lives. 5 years of early mornings and late nights. 5 years of being underestimated, overlooked, and pushed aside, all leading to this moment. Send out the all-hands message, I said. I want to talk to everyone before tomorrow. 10 minutes later, I stood before my team, over 200 people, all gathered in our main workspace. The contrast between this and Meridian's sterile corporate environment couldn't have been starker. Here, there was energy, purpose, passion. Tomorrow, I began, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. Everything changes. Not just for us, but for the entire industry. Tomorrow, we show the world what happens when you value innovation over ego, collaboration over competition, and most importantly, when you recognize that great ideas can come from anywhere, even the mailroom. A ripple of knowing laughter spread through the crowd. Many of them knew my story. Some had similar stories of their own. But tonight, I want you to remember something. Success isn't about revenge. It's about vision. Every person in this room was chosen not because of their titles or their pedigrees, but because they dared to think differently. Tomorrow, we're not just launching a company. We're launching a revolution. The room erupted in applause as I looked out at the faces before me, excited, proud, determined. I felt a surge of emotion I hadn't expected. This wasn't just about proving Meridian wrong. It was about proving that there was still room in the tech world for real innovation, for people who cared more about creating something meaningful than climbing the corporate ladder. Later that night, as the last of the team headed home, Kate found me still in my office, staring out at the city lights. "Second thoughts?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe. I shook my head, just thinking about tomorrow. About Marcus's face when he realizes who really owns the technology that could save his company. Are you going to take his call when it comes? Oh, it won't be just his call, I said, turning to face her. By noon tomorrow, every major tech company in the country will be calling. And for the first time in my career, I'll be the one deciding who gets to be heard. Kate nodded, understanding in her eyes. Get some sleep, Diana. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. As I gathered my things to leave, I caught my reflection again in the window. The same practical clothes, the same simple hairstyle. But the woman looking back at me now stood differently. Shoulders straight, head high, eyes clear. Tomorrow, the world would know what Marcus Wright and the entire Meridian executive team had failed to see. That sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one making the most noise, but the quiet one in the corner, watching, learning, and building something that would change everything. I took one last look at the Nova Systems logo glowing on the wall. My real legacy, not the mail cart they tried to reduce me to. Tomorrow would be different indeed. But first, I had one last piece of mail to deliver. Morning light streamed through the windows of my penthouse apartment as I sipped my coffee, watching CNBC's pre-market coverage. For the first time in 15 years, I wasn't heading to Meridian's offices. No mail cart. No squeaky wheels. No Marcus Wright's condescending smile. Instead, I was dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that had been hanging in my closet for precisely this day. My graying hair, usually pulled back in a practical bun, was now styled professionally. Amazing how a change of clothes and hairstyle could transform the mailroom lady into what I'd been all along, a tech CEO about to make history. My phone buzzed. Kate's message was simple. It's starting. I turned up the volume on the TV just as the financial news anchor's expression shifted from casual to alert. Breaking news banner flashed across the screen. We're getting reports of a major IPO announcement in the tech sector, she said, shuffling papers. Nova Systems, a previously unknown software company, is set to go public this morning with an initial valuation that's sending shockwaves through the industry. I smiled, remembering Marcus's words from yesterday. This is your end. He had no idea how right he was, just not in the way he'd thought. My phone exploded with notifications. First came the industry alerts, then the tech blogs, then the mainstream media. Each headline bigger than the last. Nova Systems unveils revolutionary enterprise software platform. Tech's best-kept secret goes public. Unknown company poised to disrupt cloud computing market. But my favorite was from TechCrunch. Nova Systems CEO Diana Walker, the mailroom executive who built a billion-dollar empire in secret. At 8:15 a.m., exactly when Meridian's executive team would be gathering for their morning meeting, my phone rang. Marcus Wright's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Instead, I opened my laptop to a secure feed from Meridian's lobby. A perk of having built their security systems, I still had backdoor access to their cameras. The scene was chaos. Reporters were flooding the entrance, all hoping to get a comment about Nova Systems, about me, about the technology that Meridian had dismissed years ago. Through the feed, I watched Marcus arrive, his usual swagger replaced by barely contained panic. He was already on his phone, likely trying my number again. The security guard, Carl, stopped him to say something. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read Carl's lips. Ms. Walker won't be coming in today. Kate arrived at my apartment at 8:45 a.m., practically bouncing with energy. The stock opens in 45 minutes, she announced, setting up her laptop. The trading floor is insane. Initial orders are triple what we projected. I nodded, still watching the Meridian feed. The board members were arriving now, each looking more grim than the last. They knew what this meant. Nova Systems wasn't just another competitor. We owned the patents to technology that Meridian desperately needed. Diana, Kate said softly, you should see this. She turned her laptop toward me. On the screen was an email from James, my former junior developer at Meridian. Ms. Walker, the office is in chaos. Marcus just had a meltdown in the executive meeting when legal confirmed that Nova owns the patent rights. He kept screaming about how he had you pushing mail for 3 months while you were building an empire. I just wanted you to know. We're all cheering for you. James P.S. Are you hiring? I was about to reply when my phone rang again. This time, it was Meridian's board chairman, Theodore Mills. Unlike Marcus's calls, this one I would answer. Good morning, Ted, I said calmly. Diana. His voice was tight, controlled. I believe we need to talk. We are talking. You know what I mean. The board is meeting now. We would appreciate your presence. I let the silence stretch for a moment. The same board that approved my demotion to mailroom clerk. That was a regrettable decision. One we're prepared to rectify immediately. Name your terms. I glanced at Kate, who was showing me the latest pre-market numbers. Nova's valuation had just crossed $10 billion. My terms, I said, keeping my voice level. Ted, I don't think you understand. I'm not looking for a better position at Meridian. I'm not looking for an apology. I'm not even looking for revenge. I'm looking forward. Something Meridian stopped doing a long time ago. We can match any offer, he said quickly. Whatever Nova's worth, we can. Goodbye, Ted? I cut him off. I have a stock exchange to open. The next hour passed in a blur of preparations. A car was waiting to take us to the exchange. Kate handled last-minute press inquiries while I reviewed my remarks. But before we left, I had one last piece of business to attend to. I opened my email and composed a message to Meridian's all-staff list, an address I technically shouldn't still have access to. But then again, I'd built their email system too. Dear Meridian colleagues, by now, you've heard about Nova Systems. Some of you knew me as the senior developer who was demoted to the mailroom. Others only knew me as the quiet woman who delivered your mail and picked up your dry cleaning. What none of you knew was that every day I spent pushing that mail cart was another day I spent learning. Learning who really drove innovation at Meridian. Learning who had the courage to think differently. Learning who treated people with respect, regardless of their title. To those who showed kindness when you thought I had nothing to offer, thank you. Your humanity was noted. To those who took pleasure in reminding me of my place, thank you as well. Your arrogance was equally noted. Nova Systems is now accepting applications. We hire based on talent, creativity, and character, not titles or pedigrees. You know where to find us. Warmest regards, Diana Walker, CEO, Nova Systems. I hit send just as Kate announced it was time to leave. In the car, watching the city speed by, I thought about how different this commute was from my usual morning drive to Meridian. Same streets, same traffic, but everything had changed. At the stock exchange, the energy was electric. Photographers called my name, a name none of them had known yesterday. Reporters shouted questions. Through it all, I maintained the same calm demeanor that had served me so well in the mailroom. As we approached the opening bell, Kate squeezed my hand. Ready to make history? I nodded, thinking about the long road that had led here. The late nights coding while others slept. The quiet recruitment of talented developers who'd been overlooked. The careful planning and perfect patience. The bell rang. Nova Systems was officially public. Within minutes, the stock price had doubled. By lunch, it had tripled. Every news channel was running the story, not just about Nova's revolutionary technology, but about its unconventional CEO, the mailroom executive, the patient revolutionary. Back at Meridian, Marcus Wright was discovering exactly what it meant to underestimate the wrong person. Their stock was plummeting as investors realized that their core technology was obsolete compared to Nova's platform, the same platform he'd had me pushing mail past every day. My phone buzzed with a text from Carl, the security guard. Mr. Wright just left the building. He was carrying a box. Guess someone else will be delivering the mail now. I smiled, but not out of satisfaction at Marcus's downfall. I smiled because this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. That evening, after the interviews and celebrations, I returned to Nova's headquarters. The team was still there, watching the news coverage, cheering every headline. But I headed straight to my office, where a package waited on my desk. Inside was a mail cart name tag, my old one from Meridian. Under it was a note from Kate, "Never forget where we started." I pinned the name tag to my office wall, right next to Nova's first patent filing. A reminder that success isn't about where you sit in an office. It's about what you build when no one's watching. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from James. Just submitted my resignation at Meridian. Along with half the development team. Your email inspired us. Hope that application portal is ready. I looked out at my team. Brilliant minds who'd believed in the vision when it was just an idea scratched out in a notebook. Tomorrow, we begin expanding, bringing in more talented people who'd been overlooked, underestimated, pushed aside. We'd build something even bigger. Because that's what happens when you take someone with vision and try to make them invisible. They don't disappear. They build empires in the shadows. They change the game while you're busy playing politics. And when they finally step into the light, they don't just claim a seat at the table. They build a bigger table. As the city lights twinkled outside my window, I thought about tomorrow's mail delivery at Meridian. Someone else would push that squeaky cart down those halls now. But they'd be walking past empty offices, their former occupants now racing to update their resumes, hoping to find a place at Nova Systems. I opened my laptop one last time that night, checking Nova's closing stock price. The number made me smile, not for its size, but for what it represented. Every digit was a validation of a simple truth. True power isn't in a title or an office. It's in the quiet certainty that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you're capable of. Marcus had told me to know my place. Well, now everyone knew exactly where that place was. At the helm of the company that had just disrupted the entire industry. Not bad for a mailroom clerk. The mahogany boardroom table gleamed under the morning light, reflecting years of family legacy and power. I sat there, hands folded neatly in my lap, watching my father pace back and forth like a prosecutor ready to deliver his final argument. My brother Marcus leaned against the wall, arms crossed, a hint of a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "Alexandra," my father began, his voice carrying that familiar tone of disappointment I'd grown accustomed to over the years. "We need to discuss your position at Harrison Industries." I nodded quietly, already knowing where this conversation was heading. For 15 years, I'd worked my way up through every department of our family's manufacturing company. Not because I had to. Being a Harrison meant I could have walked straight into an executive role, but because I wanted to understand every aspect of the business my grandfather had built from nothing. The board meeting yesterday, he continued, running a hand through his silver hair. That was the final straw. Ah, yes, the board meeting, where I'd suggested implementing a profit-sharing program for our factory workers and investing in sustainable manufacturing practices, where I'd presented data showing how employee satisfaction directly correlated with productivity and innovation, where I'd dared to challenge the old guard's perspective on what made a business successful. "You're too soft, Alexandra," my father declared, finally stopping his pacing to look me directly in the eyes. "This isn't a charity, it's a business, and business requires tough decisions, not whatever this bleeding heart approach is you're trying to push." Marcus pushed himself off the wall, stepping forward. "Dad's right, Lex. You're going to run this company into the ground with all these worker-friendly policies and green initiatives. We're here to make money, not friends." I sat straighter, maintaining my composure. The data supports my proposals. Happy workers are productive workers. Sustainable practices attract modern consumers and investors. It's not just about being nice. It's about long-term growth and stability. My father slammed his hand on the table, making the water glasses rattle. "Enough. I've made my decision. You're fired, Alexandra. Come back when you learn what it really takes to run a business, when you develop some backbone." The words hung in the air like smoke, acrid and suffocating. I should have felt devastated. Should have argued, pleaded, fought back. Instead, I felt something else entirely. Relief. What they didn't know, what none of them had bothered to discover, was that I'd been preparing for this moment for years. While they were busy dismissing my ideas as soft and naive, I'd been building something of my own, something that would change everything. I stood up slowly, smoothing my charcoal gray skirt. I understand, I said calmly. I'll have my office cleared by end of day. My father's brow furrowed, clearly thrown by my lack of resistance. That's it? No argument? No argument, I confirmed, picking up my leather portfolio. You've made yourself clear. Marcus laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. See, Dad, too soft to even fight for her position. Maybe this will finally teach her how the real world works. I walked to the door, then paused, turning back one last time. Thank you for the opportunity, I said quietly, and good luck. They didn't understand the weight of those words. Not yet, but they would. As I packed my office that afternoon, carefully placing 15 years of memories into cardboard boxes, I thought about the journey that had led me here, about the nights I'd spent studying market trends while my colleagues partied, about the quiet investments I'd made, the connections I'd built, the foundation I'd laid while everyone assumed I was just playing at business. My assistant, Sarah, stood in the doorway, tears in her eyes. I can't believe they're doing this to you, after everything you've done for the company. I smiled, placing a framed photo of my grandfather into the last box. It's okay, Sarah. Really? But your ideas were working, she protested. Productivity is up 30% in departments that implemented your programs. Employee turnover is down. The sustainability initiative has attracted 3 major eco-conscious clients. I know, I said softly. But sometimes people only see what they expect to see. They look at me and see softness where there's actually strategy. They mistake kindness for weakness. Sarah helped me carry the boxes to my car, her silence heady with unasked questions. As I loaded the last one into the trunk, she finally spoke. What will you do now? I closed the trunk, then turned to her with a calm smile. Now I'm going to show them what real business acumen looks like. That evening, as I sat in my home office overlooking the city lights, I opened my laptop and typed out a simple email. To Victor Morrison's subject. Time to move. Victor, the situation we discussed has developed as expected. I'm ready to proceed with Phase 1. Best, Alexander Harrison. Victor's response came within minutes. Are you sure? Once we start, there's no going back. I didn't hesitate. I'm sure. Let's begin. What my father and brother didn't know was that 3 years ago, I'd started quietly building a competing company. Nova Manufacturing had begun as a small operation, but through careful planning and strategic acquisitions, we'd grown into a formidable force in the industry. I'd used a different name, operated through holding companies, kept my involvement completely hidden. While they were busy mocking my soft approach to business, I'd been revolutionizing manufacturing processes, implementing the very programs they'd rejected at Harrison Industries. And it was working. Nova's productivity rates were industry-leading. Our employee satisfaction scores were off the charts. Our sustainable practices had attracted major contracts and positive press. Most importantly, we were profitable. Very profitable. I opened my safe and pulled out a thick folder, documentation of every misstep Harrison Industries had made over the past decade. Every cut corner, every ignored safety regulation, every instance of creative accounting. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I believed in doing business the right way. And sometimes, the right way required cleaning house. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Hope you learned your lesson, sis. Business isn't for the weak. I set the phone down without responding. Let him think he'd won. Let them all think that. Because in 3 months, when our first major move became public, they'd learn exactly who they'd underestimated. The next morning, I walked into Nova Manufacturing's headquarters through a private entrance. My office, taking up the top floor of a renovated industrial building, was everything my father would hate. Open concept, filled with natural light, walls covered in sustainability awards and employee recognition programs. Maria, my chief operating officer, waited for me with a stack of reports. Everything's ready, she said. The numbers look even better than projected. I took the reports, scanning the figures that confirmed what I already knew. We were positioned perfectly for what came next. How are you feeling? Maria asked, studying my face. It couldn't have been easy, being fired from your family's company. I looked up, meeting her concerned gaze. Actually, it was exactly what needed to happen. They think they're teaching me a lesson about being tough in business. But they're about to learn that true strength isn't about being harsh or cruel. It's about building something sustainable, something that matters. And now, she prompted. Now, I said, turning to the wall of windows overlooking the city. We show them exactly what soft leadership can accomplish. That afternoon, I called a company-wide meeting. 300 employees gathered in our main conference space, not seated in rows like at Harrison Industries, but in collaborative groups around tables. These were people who had chosen to work here, who believed in our vision of what manufacturing could be. As some of you may have heard, I began, standing at the front of the room. Harrison Industries has recently made some leadership changes. This creates an opportunity for us. Over the next 3 months, we're going to demonstrate that profitability and responsibility aren't mutually exclusive. That treating people well isn't weakness. It's the strongest business strategy there is. The room erupted in applause. These people knew what we were building here. They believed in it because they lived it every day. After the meeting, I sat alone in my office, looking at an old photo of my grandfather. He built Harrison Industries from nothing, driven by a vision of creating something meaningful. Somewhere along the way, that vision had been lost, replaced by an obsession with short-term profits and power plays. My phone buzzed again. Another text from my father. The board approved your termination unanimously. Remember this lesson. I smiled, thinking about the lessons that were coming, because while they were busy congratulating themselves on their toughness, I was about to show them what real business innovation looked like. And it would start tomorrow, with phase 1 of a plan 3 years in the making. A plan that would reshape not just Harrison Industries, but the entire industry. They thought they'd fired a soft, naive dreamer. They were about to meet a strategist who'd been playing chess while they were playing checkers. The game was finally beginning. Phase 1 began on a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 week after I'd walked out of Harrison Industries. I sat in my office at Nova Manufacturing, watching the financial news ticker scroll across my screen. Right on schedule, at 9:30 a.m., the announcement hit. Nova Manufacturing acquires Sterling Solutions, creating industry's first fully integrated sustainable supply chain. The acquisition had been in the works for months. Sterling Solutions was Harrison Industries' biggest supplier, providing nearly 60% of their raw materials. My father had always dismissed them as just another vendor. He never bothered to build a relationship with their leadership, never saw the strategic value in their position. I had. My phone started buzzing immediately. First, a message from Maria. It's done. Sterling's board just signed the final papers. We own controlling interest. Then came the text I'd been waiting for, from Marcus. Did you see the news about Sterling? This is bad, Lex. Really bad. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my email to find exactly what I expected. A message from Harrison Industries' procurement director requesting an urgent meeting with Nova's leadership to discuss ongoing supply arrangements. They had no idea I was that leadership. By noon, the industry was buzzing. Nova Manufacturing, previously seen as a rising but modest player, had just become a major force. Our stock jumped 12% on the news. Sterling's rose 15%. Harrison Industries dropped 8%. I picked up my phone and dialed Victor Morrison, my mentor and the one person who'd believed in my vision from the start. The dominoes are falling, he said when he answered. Your father just called me in a panic, asking if I'd consider emergency investment in Harrison. Apparently, their other suppliers are already raising prices, sensing blood in the water. What did you tell him? That I'd think about it. Should I mention I've been invested in Nova since day one? I smiled. Not yet. Let's see how Phase 2 plays out first. Phase 2 began the following week. While Harrison Industries scrambled to secure new supply lines and manage their dropping stock price, we launched our masterstroke. Nova announced a revolutionary profit-sharing program for all employees, combined with industry-leading sustainability initiatives. It was everything I'd tried to implement at Harrison Industries, but on a grander scale. The press ate it up. Manufacturing's new model. Nova shows how business can be both profitable and responsible. Read one headline. The future of industry. Nova's revolutionary approach attracts top talent and investors, declared another. The day after the announcement, 3 of Harrison's top engineers submitted their resignations. By the end of the week, that number had grown to 12, all headed to Nova. That's when my father finally called. Alexandra. His voice was strained, lacking its usual authoritative tone. We need to talk. About what? You know damn well about what. This company you're working for, Nova. They're systematically destroying us. I need you to use your connections there. Help us negotiate a reasonable supply agreement with Sterling. I let the silence stretch for a moment. I thought I was too soft for business, Dad. Too naive to understand how things really work. Alexandra, please. This isn't about that. This is about family. No, I said quietly. This is about consequences. About learning that treating people well isn't weakness. That sustainable business isn't just about next quarter's profits. What are you saying? I'm saying that in about an hour, Nova Manufacturing will announce its next acquisition. You might want to prepare the board. I hung up before he could respond. Then I opened my laptop and sent the email I'd been preparing for 3 years. 2. Harrison Industries Board of Directors subject. Acquisition offer. Distinguished board members. Nova Manufacturing hereby offers to acquire Harrison Industries at $42 per share, a 40% premium over current market value. Given recent market developments and supply chain challenges, we believe this represents a generous valuation. I signed it with my full name. Alexander Harrison, CEO and founder, Nova Manufacturing. The response was nuclear. My phone exploded with messages. From board members, from industry contacts, from employees past and present. But the one that mattered most came from Marcus. It was you. All along, it was you. I texted back a single word. Yes. Within an hour, I was walking into Harrison Industries' boardroom, the same room where, just weeks ago, I'd been fired for being too soft. Now I entered as a conqueror, though that's not how I saw it. I saw myself as a reformer. The board members sat in stunned silence. My father stood at the head of the table, face ashen. Marcus slumped in his chair, looking like someone had just explained that water was actually dry. "Hello, everyone," I said calmly, setting my portfolio on the table. "Shall we discuss terms?" "How?" my father demanded. "How did you do this?" "I paid attention," I replied. "While you were focused on showing everyone how tough you could be, I was building relationships. While you dismissed employee welfare as softness, I was creating a company people actually wanted to work for. While you ignored sustainability as a tree hugger's concern, I was securing contracts with the biggest players in the modern market." I opened my portfolio and began laying out documents. 3 years ago, when you shut down my proposal for employee profit sharing, I started Nova. Every time you dismissed one of my soft ideas, I implemented it there instead. And guess what? It worked. Not just worked, it thrived. The board members were already flipping through the acquisition proposal, their expressions shifting from shock to grudging admiration as they saw the numbers. "Your choice is simple," I continued. "Accept the offer, and we'll create something remarkable, a company that leads the industry not just in profits, but in innovation and responsibility. Refuse, and watch as your supply costs continue to rise, your talent continues to leave, and your market share continues to shrink." Marcus spoke up, his voice hollow. "You planned this? All of it?" "No," I corrected him. "I simply built something better. The fact that it's now in position to acquire Harrison Industries is just poetic justice." My father sank into his chair, looking suddenly old. "Why didn't you tell us? Why the secrecy? Would you have listened?" I asked quietly. "Or would you have dismissed it as another one of my soft ideas?" The silence was answer enough. 1 week later, the acquisition was approved. The press called it the industry's biggest shakeup in decades. The market responded enthusiastically, with both companies' stocks rising on the news. But the real victory came in the details. Every policy I'd once been mocked for suggesting would now be implemented across the entire organization. On the day the deal closed, I sat in my father's old office, my office now, looking at my grandfather's portrait on the wall. The door opened, and my father walked in. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said, looking older and humbler than I'd ever seen him, "about strength and what it really means." I waited. "You showed me that I was wrong," he continued. "That real strength isn't about being tough or harsh. It's about having the vision to see what others don't, and the patience to build it right. It's about balance," I said softly. "Being firm enough to make hard decisions, but human enough to make the right ones." He nodded slowly. "You're a better business leader than I ever was, than I ever could be." "That's not true," I replied. "You built something great. You just forgot why you built it. But now we have a chance to remember, and to make it even better." The next morning, I called my first company-wide meeting as CEO of the merged organizations. Thousands of employees, from both Harrison and Nova, gathered in our main auditorium and via video link. "Some of you know me as the soft executive who got fired," I began. "Others know me as the founder of Nova. Today, I want you to know me as someone who believes that true business success comes not from being the toughest, but from being the wisest. Not from demanding respect, but from earning it." I laid out our vision, Sustainable practices, fair wages, profit sharing, innovative technologies. But more than that, I laid out a new way of thinking about business itself. They called me soft, I said, because I believed in treating people well. They called me naive, because I thought business could be both profitable and responsible. Today, we're one of the industry's most successful companies precisely because of those beliefs. The applause was deafening. Later that evening, as I prepared to leave the office, I found Marcus waiting by my door. "I've been offered a position at our West Coast division," he said. "I'm not sure I deserve it." "Everyone deserves a chance to learn and grow," I replied, "even those who once called others soft." He smiled slightly. "Will you teach me how to lead the right way?" "Of course," I said. "That's what family does." As I drove home that night, I thought about the journey. About being underestimated and dismissed. About being called soft in a world that worshipped tough. I thought about how true strength often comes disguised as softness, and how the quietest plans sometimes carry the most power. 3 years ago, they fired me for being too soft. Today, that softness had revolutionized an industry. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting it right. And as I looked at the city skyline, at the buildings where thousands of people would come to work tomorrow in a company that valued them, I knew that this was just the beginning. Because soft doesn't mean weak. Sometimes it means being strong enough to change the world. The last cup of coffee I'd ever drink in our startup's office had gone cold. I stared at it, sitting on my desk like a final punctuation mark, while watching David pace our once shared workspace through the glass walls. He was on the phone with our investors again, probably spinning the same story he'd been crafting for weeks. How I was unstable. How my erratic behavior threatened the company. How he had no choice but to take control for the good of everyone involved. I almost admired his dedication to the lie. Almost. My name is Sophia Martinez, and for the past 3 years, I poured every ounce of my being into building SecureNet, a revolutionary cybersecurity system that could adapt to threats in real time. The idea had come to me during a brutal cyber attack at my previous job, watching helplessly as traditional security measures failed one by one. David had been my friend then. We'd met at a tech conference where he'd been immediately fascinated by my concept. He had the connections, the MBA, the polished pitch deck presence. I had the vision and the coding skills to make it real. It seemed perfect. "We'll change the world," he'd said over beers the night we signed our partnership agreement. 50-50. Partners all the way. I should have known better. Should have seen the signs. The way he slowly took control of all investor meetings. The way my name started appearing smaller and smaller in presentations. The way he began referring to himself as the founder in interviews, relegating me to head of development. But I was too busy building, too focused on perfecting the system that would revolutionize cybersecurity, too trusting, until this morning. "The board has concerns," he'd announced, walking into my office like he owned it. Which technically, as of last night's emergency board meeting, he did. "Your recent behavior, the missed meetings, the secretive coding sessions." "You mean the core system development? The actual product we're supposed to be launching?" He waved dismissively. "The point is, changes need to be made. The board has voted to restructure the company leadership. You're being removed as CTO, effective immediately. I sat there, letting his words wash over me. The board, 3 of his friends from business school who'd invested early. The restructure, his final move to push me out completely. And my shares? I asked quietly. He smiled, that same charming smile that had once convinced me to trust him. We'll buy you out. 10 cents on the dollar. Generous, considering the circumstances. The circumstances you manufactured. His smile tightened. Be reasonable, Sophia. You're a coder. A good one, sure, but this company needs real leadership. Professional management. You're not equipped for that. I stood, gathering my laptop. And you are. I've raised $12 million in funding. I got us coverage in every major tech blog. I've built relationships with Fortune 500 clients. What have you done? Hidden in your office writing code that nobody understands. That's when I knew for certain I'd made the right choice 3 months ago, when the first red flags had appeared, when I'd first noticed files being copied, meetings being held without me. I'd prepared. You're right, I said, picking up my coffee cup. Nobody understands my code, including you. He frowned. We have other developers. They'll figure it out. Will they? I smiled, dropping my key card on the desk. Good luck with the launch next week. I'm sure it'll be interesting. His face darkened. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing at all. Just wondering if you've ever actually read any of my code. If you understand what the term master architecture means. He stepped closer, trying to intimidate. Are you threatening me? Not at all. Like you said, I'm just a coder. What damage could I possibly do? I walked out of the office for the last time, past the logo I'd designed, past the whiteboards filled with my handwriting, past 3 years of dreams and dedication. Behind me, I heard David barking orders. Change all the passwords. Lock her out of everything. And somebody get me a complete system backup. I smiled. They wouldn't find what they were looking for. Not in time. In my car, I pulled out my phone and sent one encrypted message. It's time. The response came immediately. Systems ready. Awaiting your command. For 3 months, I'd been preparing for this moment. Ever since I discovered David's plans, I'd been building something in secret. A parallel system, hidden within SecureNet's architecture. To the casual observer, even to skilled developers, it looked like standard security protocols. But it was so much more. I drove home to my apartment, but not to the main living space. Instead, I went to the secret office I'd built in what was supposedly a storage unit next door. 3 monitors sprang to life, showing me everything happening on SecureNet servers. They were already trying to lock me out, changing passwords, revoking access. Watching their frantic activity was like watching ants scurrying before a storm. They had no idea what was coming. My phone buzzed, a message from Anna, one of the junior developers I'd mentored. Sophia, what's happening? David's going crazy, demanding we audit all your code before the launch. Good luck with that, I typed back. How many lines of code are there now? Over 2 million. It would take weeks to review it all thoroughly. And the launch is in 6 days. She sent back a worried emoji. Are we in trouble? Not you, I'd assured her. Make sure you document everything David asks you to do. Trust me. I turned back to my monitors, watching as David brought in an outside security team. They were good. I could see them methodically working through the system architecture, looking for backdoors or time bombs. They wouldn't find any, because what I'd built wasn't about destruction. It was about creation. The real SecureNet, the one I'd been building in secret, wasn't just a security system. It was a self-evolving AI that learned from every attack, every threat, every attempt to breach it. The version David had, a sophisticated shell, functional enough to demo, but missing the core intelligence that made it revolutionary. He thought he was stealing my company. In reality, he'd stolen an empty vessel. That evening, my private phone, the one David didn't know about, rang. It was Jerome Washington, CEO of Global Guard, the largest cybersecurity firm in the country. "Is it true?" he asked without preamble. "Did they really push you out?" News travels fast. In this industry, like lightning, especially when someone's about to make a catastrophic mistake. He paused. "That system of yours, the real one, is it ready?" I smiled in the darkness of my secret office. "Why do you ask?" "Because I've seen the demos, the real ones, not the sanitized version your partner's been shopping around. And I know that what you built is worth 10 times whatever they're planning to launch." Interesting timing. "Sophia," his voice turned serious, "they're going to fail. Spectacularly. And when they do, there's going to be a very small window of opportunity. The question is, are you ready to walk through it?" I looked at my screens, at the real SecureNet, humming quietly in its secret servers, learning, growing, evolving beyond anything David could imagine. "I've been ready for 3 months. Good, because when this all falls apart, I want to be your first call." I hung up and leaned back in my chair, watching David's team continue their frantic preparation for the launch. They were working through the night, trying to understand a system that was designed to be misunderstood. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Anna. "David's telling everyone you had a mental breakdown, that you were paranoid about the company being stolen from you. He's making you sound crazy." I thought about the real code, safely hidden away, about the AI that was even now growing stronger, learning from every probe and test they ran on its empty shell. "Let him talk," I replied. "Actions speak louder than words. And next week is going to be very, very loud." I closed my laptop and walked to my window. Nervous. Something feels wrong with the system, but nobody can figure out what. It's like trying to catch smoke. Everything looks right, but nothing quite works the way it should. Of course it didn't. They were working with a shadow of the real system, a sophisticated replica that would function perfectly in demos, but fall apart under real-world conditions. And those conditions were about to hit hard. At noon, my private phone rang. Jerome Washington from Global Guard again. "We're in position," he said without preamble. "My team has reviewed your private documentation. The real system, it's beyond anything we imagined." "That was the point," I replied, watching David on my screen as he rehearsed his presentation one last time. Nobody imagined it because they were too busy looking for conventional solutions. How long before they realize? I checked the time. About 3 hours. The launch starts at 2 p.m. By 2:30, their system will face its first real test. And then we'll see who really built SecureNet. At 1 p.m., I received another message from Anna. "David's getting aggressive. He keeps demanding we run more security checks, but nothing's showing up as wrong. He knows something's off, but can't prove it." I smiled, remembering all the nights I'd spent crafting this moment. The real SecureNet wasn't just hiding. It was actively masking its absence, using AI to present a perfect facade until the moment of truth. At 1:45, I changed into a sharp black suit and headed to the Metropolitan Tech Center. not to the main hall where the launch was happening, but to a private room I'd reserved on the floor above. From there, I could watch everything unfold on multiple screens while maintaining complete deniability. The launch began precisely at 2 p.m. David took the stage to thunderous applause, every inch the successful tech CEO in his expensive suit and practiced smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "today we revolutionize cybersecurity forever. SecureNet isn't just another protection system, it's the future of digital defense." I watched as he launched into his presentation, showing carefully curated demos of the system's basic functions. The audience was impressed. These features worked perfectly because they were real. I'd built them as the foundation of the true system. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. "And now," David announced proudly, "we'll demonstrate SecureNet's revolutionary adaptive response capabilities with a live test. We've invited some of the world's top white hat hackers to attempt to breach a test server protected by our system." My phone buzzed. "Jerome? Ready?" "Watch," I texted back. The first few minutes of the test went smoothly. The basic security protocols handled simple attack attempts exactly as designed. David was beaming, his confidence growing with each successful defense. Then, at exactly 2:27 p.m., everything changed. The test hackers, following the script I'd secretly provided to Jerome, launched a sophisticated multi-vector attack. The kind of attack the real SecureNet would have adapted to instantly. The kind that would expose the hollow shell they were actually running. At first, the system appeared to respond correctly. Then, like a house of cards in a gentle breeze, it began to collapse. Warning messages flooded the main display. Security protocols failed in cascading sequences. The beautiful interface David had been so proud of flickered and died. "Minor technical difficulty," he'd announced, his voice tight. "We'll have this resolved in a moment." But it wasn't minor, and it wouldn't be resolved. Because what was happening wasn't a system failure. It was the system performing exactly as I'd designed it to perform when someone tried to run it without the true core architecture. Anna's message popped up. "Sophia, everything's crashing. Not just the demo system, everything. David's going crazy." I watched through my monitors as David's polished facade cracked. He was barking orders into his phone, demanding the development team fix something they didn't understand. Then came the whispers. I could see them spreading through the audience as tech-savvy observers realized what they were witnessing. This wasn't just a failed demo. This was a fundamental architectural collapse. At 2:45, David's phone rang. I knew who it would be, the first of their major clients demanding answers. Because the system failure hadn't just affected the demo. Every test instance they distributed to potential clients was showing the same behavior. "Where's Sophia?" I heard him demand into his phone. "Find her. She has to have done something to the code." But I hadn't done anything to their code. I'd simply let them have exactly what they thought they'd stolen. A sophisticated replica that would work perfectly until the moment it needed to be truly intelligent. At 3 p.m., as David struggled to maintain control of the increasingly restless audience, I sent one message to Jerome. "Ready for Phase 2. He replied instantly. "Broadcasting now." Suddenly, every screen in the auditorium switched to a new display. Not the SecureNet logo, but a live demonstration of the real system, the one I'd been developing in secret, the one that was, at that very moment, effortlessly defending against attacks that had crashed David's version. The audience fell silent, watching in awe as the true SecureNet adapted and evolved in real time. showcasing capabilities that made David's presentation look like a child's toy. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jerome's voice boomed through the speakers, "I'm Jerome Washington, CEO of Global Guard. What you're witnessing is the actual SecureNet system, developed by its true creator, Sophia Martinez." David spun around, staring at the screens in horror as Jerome continued. While others focused on taking credit, Ms. Martinez focused on innovation. "The result is what you see before you, not just a security system, but a true AI-driven adaptive defense platform." I stood and walked to the railing of my private balcony, finally letting myself be seen. The audience followed Jerome's gaze upward, and for the first time since this began, I locked eyes with David. He looked small suddenly, standing in the ruins of his stolen success. "The system you tried to launch today," I called down, my voice carrying clearly through the hushed room, "was never more than a shadow. A convincing replica, yes, but ultimately empty, because the real SecureNet was never about the code you thought you'd stolen. It was about the architecture only I fully understood. You sabotaged us," he sputtered. "No, David. I let you sabotage yourself. Everything that happened today was the natural result of trying to launch a system you didn't understand and couldn't control." Jerome took the stage, smoothly taking control of the presentation. "Global Guard is proud to announce our exclusive partnership with Ms. Martinez and the true SecureNet technology. We invite all interested parties to join us in the main conference room for a demonstration of what real innovation looks like." As the audience filed out, following Jerome's team, I watched David standing alone on stage, surrounded by screens showing the failure of his attempted theft. My phone buzzed one final time. "Anna, the team just got the announcement. Global Guard is offering us all positions with the real SecureNet division. Is this really happening?" "It's happening," I replied. "Hope you're ready to build something revolutionary, this time without hiding." I turned to leave, but David's voice stopped me. "You planned this," he called out. "All of it. You let me think I'd won." I looked back at him, feeling nothing but a distant pity. "You wanted to steal a company, David. I wanted to build something that mattered. We both got exactly what we deserved." As I walked out, I could hear the excitement from the conference room where Jerome was showing what the real SecureNet could do. The system I'd spent 3 years building was finally being seen for what it truly was. Not just a security platform, but a new paradigm in digital defense. And David? He was about to learn that in the tech world, true innovation can't be stolen. It can only be built, one line of code at a time. 6 months after what tech blogs now called the SecureNet revelation, I stood in Global Guard's new innovation center, watching real-time displays of our system protecting networks across the globe. The numbers were staggering. Over 5,000 clients, including 80% of the Fortune 500, with a security success rate that made traditional systems look prehistoric. Another attack prevented, Maya, my new chief of operations, announced. The system adapted to the threat pattern before it even fully formed. The NSA wants to know how we knew it was coming. We didn't. I smiled, watching the AI's neural pathways reorganize on my screen. The system did. That's the beauty of true adaptive architecture. I picked up the latest copy of Tech Innovator magazine. The cover story read, SecureNet, the AI security revolution that changed everything. Inside was a smaller article. Former tech CEO David Parker faces federal investigation over intellectual property theft. Speaking of David, Maya continued, his lawyers reached out again. They're floating another settlement offer. I set down the magazine. Same answer as always. I'm not interested in settlements. I'm interested in truth. The truth had come out spectacularly in the weeks following the failed launch. David's carefully crafted image had crumbled as investors and board members turned on him, revealing a pattern of deception that went far beyond just pushing me out. He'd been cooking the books, making promises he couldn't keep, all while trying to steal something he didn't understand. But that wasn't my concern anymore. My focus was on building something bigger than revenge. The Innovation Academy applications are ready for review, Maya said, pulling up a new screen. Over 2,000 candidates for the first class. The Academy had been my idea, a program to identify and support overlooked tech innovators, particularly those who'd been pushed aside or underestimated. We committed $100 million to fund their projects and provide mentorship. Start with this one. I pointed to a familiar name, Anna Thompson. My former colleague had stayed at the old SecureNet through the collapse, documenting everything. Her testimony had been crucial in the federal investigation, and her own innovations, once suppressed under David's leadership, were remarkable. Already flagged her, Maya grinned. Along with that entire team of developers you mentioned. The ones who saw but couldn't speak, I finished. Exactly the kind of talent we want to nurture. My phone buzzed. Jerome Washington, now my co-chair on the Global Guard board. You're going to want to see this. Turn on CNBC. I clicked on the wall screen just in time to see the breaking news. Tech fraud investigation expands. Multiple executives implicated in systematic theft of innovation. It wasn't just about David anymore. The investigation had uncovered a network of tech leaders who'd made a practice of pushing out innovators and stealing their work. The industry was facing a reckoning. Perfect timing, Maya said, pulling up another document. The Patent Protection Initiative is ready to launch. This was the project I was most proud of. A legal and technical framework to protect individual innovators from corporate theft. We developed it in partnership with leading tech law firms, creating a blockchain-based system for securing intellectual property rights. Schedule the announcement for next week, I decided, and make sure every tech incubator in the country gets an invitation. That evening, I had dinner with Jerome in my new office, no longer hidden, but occupying the top floor of Global Guard's headquarters with a view of the city I was helping protect. Remember when we first discussed this partnership? He asked, pouring wine. You were working from that secret office, watching David dig his own grave. Seems like a lifetime ago. You could have destroyed him more completely, you know. The evidence you had, the recordings. I shook my head. Destruction was never the goal. Building something better was. Speaking of building, he slid a tablet across the table. The acquisition offers are getting serious. Microsoft just doubled their bid. I didn't even look at the numbers. Not interested. I knew you'd say that. He smiled. Which is exactly why I wanted you as a partner. This was never about money for you. It's about making sure no other innovator has to work in shadows, I said, walking to the window. About creating spaces where good ideas can grow without fear of theft. My phone buzzed. A message from Anna. Just saw the Academy announcement. Is this really happening? It's happening, I replied. Time to build in the light. The next morning, I called an all-hands meeting. Our atrium was packed, hundreds of employees in person, thousands more joining virtually from our offices worldwide. 1 year ago, I began. I was working in secret, watching something I built being stolen. Today, we're not just building security systems. We're creating a future where innovation is protected, where good ideas can't be stolen, where talent rises on merit rather than manipulation. I gestured to the screens showing our global impact. Networks protected, attacks prevented, innovation secured. Starting today, every employee owns part of this mission. Stock options for everyone, from senior developers to support staff. Because real innovation comes from everywhere, and everyone deserves to benefit from what they help build. The announcement was met with thunderous applause. As I watched my team celebrate, I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, working alone in that hidden office. That evening, as I prepared to leave, Maya brought me one final piece of news. David's company filed for bankruptcy. Their remaining clients all migrated to our platform. I thought about him, probably sitting in some lawyer's office, still trying to figure out how it all went wrong. Still not understanding that true innovation can't be stolen. It has to be nurtured, protected, allowed to grow. My phone buzzed. A message from one of our Academy applicants. Your story inspired me to keep building even when no one believed in my ideas. Thank you for showing us it's possible. I smiled, remembering exactly how that felt. Then I opened my laptop and began reviewing applications, ready to give other overlooked innovators the chance to build something extraordinary. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying what others tried to steal. It's about building something so magnificent that theft becomes impossible. About creating a future where innovation is protected and talent can thrive in the open. The next morning, I approved funding for 20 new projects through the Academy. As I signed the documents, I thought about David and all the others who thought they could steal success rather than earn it. But I wasn't building for them anymore. I was building for every person who'd ever been told their ideas were too ambitious, their dreams too big, their innovations too disruptive. And we were just getting started. Because success isn't just about proving thieves wrong. It's about proving innovators right. Again and again and again. Until the only voice that matters is the one that says, build something extraordinary. And so we did. And so we would. One innovation at a time. The following week, I stood on stage at MIT's technology conference, announcing the Patent Protection Initiative. Looking out at the sea of young faces, I saw the future, not just of technology, but of protected innovation. Build, I told them. Build without fear. Build without hiding. Build knowing that your ideas are yours to develop, your innovations yours to grow. In the front row, I spotted Anna with her team, already working on projects that would have been impossible under David's leadership. Behind her sat developers from 20 different companies, all ready to be part of something bigger than individual success. After the announcement, a young programmer approached me, clutching a laptop. Ms. Martinez, I have an idea. Everyone says it's impossible, but tell me, I said, leading her to a quiet corner. Because that's what real innovation looks like. Not stolen success, but earned triumph. Not hidden genius, but protected brilliance. One idea at a time, until the light of innovation shines so bright that shadows have nowhere to hide. And that's a revenge sweeter than any destruction could ever be.